So welcome everyone to our latest EX-based webinar, Recalibrate and Rise. This session is really built around the book Emma and I have written together, which comes out in December, called People First Internal Communication. And we're going to drill down into one particular part of the book and one focus of our thinking around skills, strengths, capabilities, and how we need to evolve those for the future of IC. We're joined today by two of our favourite comms people, Sherelle Wigley. Sherelle is currently Head of Employee Experience at Trainline. She has more than 25 years experience in IC, culture, change, engagement across a diverse range of industries, including tech, healthcare, entertainment and retail. She also has an MSc in organisational psychology and is really passionate, as we are, about making people's experience at work better than it is. That's what drives her. I'd say that's what drives us as well, Em. So Sherelle, welcome. We will open. We'll introduce you properly later on, but just to flag up Sherelle, and then Andy McLeod. Andy again has over 25 years experience, 15 years in-house, and then he crossed to the dark side to become a recruiter specialising in comms recruitment. Since 2014, he's placed around 250 internal communicators in permanent and contract roles right across the sector. Recently, he took on the day-to-day running of Comma Partners, one of the big names in IC recruitment here in the UK. He regularly hosts roundtable sessions with internal comms leaders from around the world. And according to Andy, the #1 topic for some time now has been, are we future fit? So a lot of people really poring over this theme of what does IC need to look like in the future, which we'll delve in today. So welcome Sherelle, welcome Andy. And of course, I'm joined by the brilliant Emma Bridger, my co-author on People First Internal Comms. Em, do you want to say anything more?
No, that's good enough for me. Thank you. That's very nice on a Tuesday afternoon.
Fantastic. And I should say it's Emma's birthday today. So many happy returns, Emma, doing this on your birthday.
I've had lots of people saying, you do anything special? I'm like, yeah.
An EX-based webinar, absolutely. Right, shall we share the slides, Em, and sure. Get the ball rolling?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Okay, so you've all found the chat functionality already. With the way that webinars are now, the sort of video, etc., is locked down, but please use the chat functionality to share any observations, any thoughts, and any questions. There will be points in the webinar where we'll go to you for your thoughts and feedback. So please make use of that chat functionality there. So just a little bit of scene setting before we get to the skills piece, and really set up the backdrop for this. I think over the last, I guess, 5 to 10 years, we've seen and experienced a kind of perfect storm in the workplace. We've had a hugely turbulent world, of course. We've had a global pandemic. We've had changes in new generations coming into the workplace. But these two themes are really the key drivers of what we're now seeing and what's happening. The first one is, I guess, changing employee expectations and the sense that employees now demand the same sort of experience that they're getting in their personal lives. So when we go on to Netflix or Spotify or any number of great sort of online experiences, those tools know who we are. They know our likes, our preferences. They feed us material that is absolutely in line with those likes and experiences, and people want that same level of ease, of kind of frictionless experience, of authentic connection, of a sense that the provider knows me as a person and delivers personalized communication. And we call that a consumer grade experience. That's a term that we're seeing more and more now. And then on the other side is, of course, AI. Huge absolute game changer in many respects, still very early days, but absolutely reshaping the way that we do communications, the way that we do many things in the workplace, and changing it at pace. KM. And then I think the other piece for us is that the old models of internal comms just aren't working. So I guess 17 years ago, in my previous role as a director at Gatehouse, we launched a little survey of the internal comm space called State of the Sector, which is still going today under Gallagher, who bought Gatehouse. It's a practitioner view survey, annual survey of the state of IC. And back then we asked about challenges, and those challenges have remained pretty well unchanged, particularly things like line manager effectiveness, ineffective leaders, disengaged employees, influence. These sort of themes and challenges come up again and again. So internal comms has almost become a profession that's stuck on repeat, same themes, same challenges, and really we haven't moved the dial in so many areas over the last 20 years or so. So that's a big part of the backdrop to this. Thanks, Em. And then I think the sense that what's got us here won't get us there, and in particular the sense that the skills that have made us successful as practitioners are no longer what will propel us forward. We need to revisit the skills, and that's really the key focus for today. So we talk about internal comms facing its blockbuster moment. Blockbuster, you remember, was the video rental retailer. Streaming came along. Blockbuster were very aware of streaming. It was around for about 5 years before Blockbuster finally went to the wall, but it slowly sort of eroded its entire purpose and reason for being. So we talk about in the book about IC facing a similar moment, its Blockbuster moment, and just as streaming killed off DVD rentals, so too, if we sit and watch technology advance without adapting who we are and what we do, we risk becoming irrelevant as well as a profession. So should we be scared? Perhaps. It really depends on your viewpoint, and that's what we'll cover off as we go through this. But really, we're viewing this very much as an opportunity. This is a moment for a professional reboot, a professional reset for internal comms, and really is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to kind of hit reset, think about what we are as a profession, and move forward. So we talk very briefly, want to cover off the sort of backdrop and history. So internal comms as a profession has its roots really in sort of Victorian, the early Victorian industrialists. So companies like Cadbury and Rowntree, and others that were led at the time by principled leaders, quite often religious leaders, very much put people first. And they were building communities in bricks and mortar, genuinely building communities long before we started talking about building communities as IC professionals. But very quickly, the world moved on. Industrialization kicked in. We had world wars. We had the rise of kind of propaganda, and we moved from this sort of these early people first, human centric roots of IC to what we call the process-led era of IC. So this is the first big age really of internal communication, and it was about IC being focused primarily on delivering messages. And we use this metaphor of the iceberg. We talk about that era really being about the surface level stuff, so what you can see above the surface, the content and the channels and the messages, but very little visibility and thought going into the psychology of it, how people experience their communication journey. Next, please, Em. And then we move from process-led to expert-led, and this has really become the kind of dominant way of thinking about IC for the last 30, 40 years. We've seen the rise of internal communication functions within organizations. We've seen increasing levels of sophistication. So the role of IC has shifted from being purely about messaging to enabling change. Things like engagement, we've got more under the surface. We've got visibility of employees. We've thought about them. We've developed things like personas. We've made use of some of these human-centric tools, but still focusing on that surface level stuff with a little bit of diving below the surface. And this is the age of really, I guess, transactional broadcast communication, channels and messages, quite surface level still. And it's internal communication as gatekeepers, really. I think back to my former agency, Gatehouse. The Gatehouse is the home of the gatekeeper. And that was very much of its time. We set that up in 2006. And that kind of, for me, almost embodies this expert-led era, internal communication as control. And now we stand on the cusp of the third big era of IC, what we call the people first era. And this is about moving from all of that, the expert-led, doing internal comms to people, to being much more experience focused, thinking as an experienced designer, getting right under the surface, below the waterline there, and understanding what makes employees tick, involving employees, co-creating strategies, messaging, etc. with employees. We still need to do the expert stuff, but increasingly that stuff is going to be enabled and undertaken by AI. We say AI led there. It's AI enabled at the moment, but very soon it will become AI led. And it's time to refocus on where our value lies as a profession. Does it lie in messaging? Does it lie in what we call the IC process factors? Being an expert, can we build our profession around expertise when we have ChatGPT and other tools that can answer any question within a matter of seconds? Do we build our profession around content, around messaging, around air traffic control, when AI can do all those things incredibly well? The answer is no. If we do, we will quickly become irrelevant. So what we need to do is refocus, take this opportunity by working with AI, by partnering with AI to embrace AI around those areas and free ourselves up to do the human stuff, to dive under the surface where the bulk of the iceberg is, and focus on people and human-centered activity. Thank you, Emma. Anything to add, Em, before we move on?
Sorry, it's always fun, isn't it, trying to manage Zoom
Unmute.
in the back, kind of doing slides and trying to find out where the mute button's gone. I'm in full screen. No, I think that's great. It's just really sort of just to, I mean, we kind of live in our brand here, right? So a lot of these ideas we're sharing are kind of prototypes, and we want to evolve them with you as a community, which is why we set up the People First IC movement. So we'd love to know what you think about this, and this is kind of a start of a 10, really. And I think it's fair to say when we first sort of talked to IC professionals, practitioners, etc., at the IOIC conference earlier this year, we were really nervous about this, weren't we? Because we felt like, although for us it's a work of optimism, we were cognizant of the fact that, quite rightly, people could be quite defensive, say, well, I've trained for years to be an expert, and you're telling me to let go of my expertise. But actually, I've got to say, I should have had more confidence in the profession, because people absolutely got it, didn't they, Lee? And they're like, yeah, I get this. I get now that the expertise of old, now, we've got AI that can do so much of what we train, like, things like copywriting, right? Writing in different tones of voice that we've all done in our kind of careers. Now we don't really need to do that anymore, because AI can do it like way better than most of us can. And yes, we still need to know our stuff. We need to understand our context. We need to understand the nuance, the political background, all that sort of stuff. But actually, putting together some content, for example, for an intranet, AI could do that way better, quicker, faster, more efficiently, than we could. So a lot of this is about saying, well, okay, so this then frees us up to do the real work of internal comms, which is really about the people. So the stuff that we've been saying for years, well, I'd love to do that. I'd love to get to a point where our IC is really personalized, but I just ain't got time. Now we've got time to do that because AI can do a lot of the kind of the stuff that took up a lot of our bandwidth for many, many years. So letting go of those strengths, managing channels. I mean, I was on a great call last week. Was it last week or this week? I can't remember. I think it was last week. It was what was Simply Communicators, now part of Gallagher, and talking about how so much of that channel management now will come through your AI, right? So people won't go to the intranet or to find an email or to find, a pack. They'll just go to whatever AI you're using and say, what do I need to know about this, or tell me about that? And it's, yes, we still need to put the right information behind the scenes, but it's going to be the whole thing is being completely transformed. So letting go of those strengths and saying this frees me up to do some much more exciting and value adding work is kind of where I'm coming from, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's recognizing that the model many of us are still working to was built for another era. The world has fundamentally shifted. And our language is wrapped up in that, isn't it, Emma? We talk about
Yeah.
audiences, campaigns. It's the language of sort of broadcast, of entertainment, of propaganda. And it sort of very much guides what we do. But what we're talking about here is a shift from kind of campaigns to journeys, from messages to moments, from sort of audio broadcasting to audience to deep empathy, curiosity, co-creation. It's an absolute shift of approach, but very much enabled by AI.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's move on to skills. And now we've set the backdrop up, and I want to put this to you, you folk out there. Get your views and thoughts in the chat, please, and we'll open up the floor as well to Andy and Sherelle here, and of course you, Am. What skills do you think internal practitioners will need most in the next 5 years? Where do you think this is heading? And do you agree? Are those skills that have got us here right for the future, or is it a very different set of skills? Just let's perhaps I can come to you first, Andy.
Yeah, I think I've unmuted
You
myself.
have
Yeah,
indeed. Thank
all
you.
good, all good. Thank you very much. Yeah, cheers, Lee. I mean, look, everything you've just said resonates with me as someone who's now been in internal comms recruitment for 10 years and not seen very much change over the years. This is such a moment, I think, and I think a lot of people are already on that journey, but haven't really kind of come together with others to understand it. I think it kind of on a AI discovery journey, trying to work out where they might sit as an IC leader or an IC professional, and what that looks like in terms of skills. So I think at the sort of mid-level, as I call it, manager, business partner, people in maybe a channel manager or a intranet manager role, they need to be looking at what they're going to be needed to do when actually a lot of their role is taken away. And as you can imagine, there's some people I speak to who are maybe fighting against it a little bit, and there's others who are absolutely moving forward really quickly. So I held a roundtable last month where a FTSE 100 director of IC has already got her two business partners actually doing a lot more of the influencing, listening, being curious out in the business rather than spending 90% of their time at their desk doing what they call the grunt work. So I think there are people embracing it really quickly, but I think there's more listening going on than ever. It sounds so straightforward, doesn't it? But there's so much more listening going on now. The influencing skills should rise as people are released from doing some of that grunt work. And I think most people in internal comms, I truly believe, are empathetic people. I think as part of the skill set we've always had. Empathy, I think, will be really important going forward. But then you start to think about, do we need good writers or do we need good proofreaders? So what will the balance be there? But certainly, I suppose, to sum up from my perspective, there's a lot of people at different ends of the spectrum in that I speak to. Some who are really motoring forward, seeing the positives, and there are some still sort of discovering and working out what it means for them in their business in the environment they're working in. Because let's not forget, there's some people who are restricted by what AI they can use in their business, and others are forced to use certain tools. So it's a very mixed picture out there. But I think for me, influencing, listening, and having that curiosity will be the big ones.
Yeah, Brilliant, thank you. And it's interesting the point about influencing. Again, you know, we've talked about becoming trusted advisors for what feels like an eternity, but often we've just not had the bandwidth to be able to do that well, to really connect with leaders and get to know them and demonstrate that curiosity to leaders day in, day out. So again, it's about leveraging AI to do that. And of course, the skill of partnering with AI, using AI as not just a tool, but a sidekick and a collaborator. So great stuff there. Sherelle, what about from an in-house perspective? What leaps out for you?
Yeah, I kind of resonate with everything Andy said there. I think there's a couple of things. Like for me, it's really like those foundational skills of like good quality communication and knowing what that is and how to evaluate it are still going to be really important. You might not be writing it yourself, you might not be creating it yourself, but you need to be able to evaluate what comes out of AI. And, you know, there's a lot of kind of talk now about the AI slop, and, you know, everyone's got access to ChatGPT, and, you know, they can create stuff themselves, which is great, but there's got to be some quality control there. And I think central to that in our role in house is about those relationships and about that influencing. So, you know, if people are able to create their own stuff, brilliant. But how do we then stop that slop going out to the business? You know, you need to have the relationships, you need to be able to advise and influence, you need to be able to evaluate and advise. And in order to do that, you need those foundational skills to do that, but you need to have the credibility, you need to have the relationships, you need to be able to influence, you need to have the courage to say, no, that's not quite good enough. And, you know, it's a sort of double-edged sword, because not having to do all of that grunt work, as Andy just described it, kind of frees us up to put time into building those relationships. And those, for me, I think are going to be so critical going forward, because if you are shunted away in a corner and no one really understands what value you bring to an organization, then, you know, we as professionals are very much at risk of CFOs going, well, why do we need this team? Why do we need these people? We'll just get AI to do it. And yeah, AI can do a lot of stuff at the moment. It's not always great. Now that will change. That will change really rapidly. So it's on all of us to be on top of it, playing with it, experimenting with it, pushing the boundaries with it, being one step ahead of you know, what our stakeholders are doing themselves and thinking of themselves. So yeah, the human side of things is going to become ever more important, but we also cannot let go of the fact that we have got to be the true quality heroes of content as well, just in a different format.
Yeah, so kind of double down on everything that's human, absolutely, leverage AI. But, you know, we've become part of the problem as well, haven't we? We talk about this corporate sludge, you know, and the noise that we generate as communicators. We've got, you know, often less is more. Frank makes a really great point here, some great comments in the chat, but in particular, don't look at this as a 5-year block. Our question was, what are the skills in 5 years' time? We need to be changing and acting right now. This stuff is happening so incredibly fast. Look at what AI has done in the last 2 to 3 years. In 5 years' time, it will be light years ahead of where it is now. It's learning at that sort of pace. So this isn't something to wait and watch and decide. This is something we all need to get stuck into right now. So Em, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the capability model?
Let's do it. Let's do it. It's great to see some of the comments coming through in the chat, and you won't be surprised to see that much of what you said you will recognize in our prototype. So this is a prototype. So we live in our kind of I don't want to say a brand. It's not a brand. We're practicing what we preach right here, in that we are all about using tools from areas like service design thinking, product design, etc. So what we've come up with in the book is a start of a 10. It's a prototype. We're not saying this is it, it's done, it's perfect. We're saying we've put our heads together. We've spoken to a bunch of people as well. I've done some research. Here's where we're at, but we absolutely want to iterate this and evolve this and experiment with this with all of you. So please do get involved with this. So this is where we're at today, right? So let's start on the right-hand side. So the right-hand side are what we call the key capabilities or the foundational skills. And this is the stuff that previously we've been famous for. This is the stuff, it's that kind of the foundational stuff that you need to be a good internal communicator. But this is the stuff that now AI can do a lot of this. I totally agree with what you're saying, Joelle, as well. We had this conversation recently, didn't we, that, you know, you still have to know your stuff, right? Because if you're working with AI, you have to be able to say, well, actually, you haven't quite understood that, or you've missed the point on that piece of copy, or actually, what on earth are you talking about? Are you on something today? You know, we've all had those experiences of using AI, right? You still have to know what you're talking about, but it just means that rather than spending a day writing copy or content or blogs, whatever it might be, you know, you probably could do it in like, I don't know, maybe an hour or a couple of hours. So those key capabilities, we still have to understand what good looks like, but so much of that now AI can do today, right? Actually can do here and now today. On the left-hand side, we've got more of the strategic skills. Now, this is the area where I think those pioneering IC individuals and teams are probably already some way there. So things like behavioral science. So I work with some great clients who really kind of lean into the whole kind of psychology, you know, how do we get people to behave differently? Because that's the whole purpose of communication. We're not just doing it for a laugh, we're doing it because we want people to do things differently. Things like facilitation and coaching. So many of us will have been trained coaches and use coaching skills in internal comms. And by the way, I think coaching is a great skill to use with AI. So coaching your AI and asking your AI great questions is really great to get good results. Stakeholder engagement, you know, that's something we've done for years. But there are things like human-centered design. That's something we are really, really big on. I talk about this a bit later, but I very rarely see internal comms teams really embracing, you know, design thinking, human-centered design. I don't see comms teams thinking about communication as an experience, thinking about the end-to-end journey. What does a communication journey look like? What are the moments that matter in communication? And when we use the sorts of tools from human-centered design, we move into that genuine facilitation space. We're not going in with the answers. We're saying, let us listen and find out what's working. And it's so fascinating. So when we've done this with the amazing companies we get to work with who are in this space, what they think are the moments that matter to their people, then they're never aligned with what really matters. I'll give you a quick example there. Let's think about a communications team working with an HR team on maternity policy and approach and return to work. And, you know, they come up with a really great microsites and really cool packs and, you know, some really good assets. But when you actually map that journey with people who have returned to work following maternity or paternity leave, that's not the stuff that matters to them. It's something completely, it's like, well, did I feel welcome back on day one? Did my card work? You know, with a team welcoming? Did my manager care? You know, so these are sorts of skills that are really, really important. And then when we get to that middle piece, the superpowers, what we're seeing here are these kind of very human skills, and we all have these, right? But they're not kind of fixed traits. We can all learn to get better at these. So some people are naturally more empathic and curious than others, but all of us can work on these. So these superpowers are very much human-centered skills. So the ability to be empathic, so to walk in the shoes of others. So how does this communication experience feel for the people I'm designing for? Rather than I need to do a campaign and make sure everyone knows about the values and they live them. Actually, how might this feel for people working on the front line? How might this feel for them? Getting curious. And again, curiosity is absolutely critical as a skill when working with AI. The more curious you are working with AI, the better outcome you'll get. Being resilient, obviously, being creative, as in not necessarily kind of, you know, being a great artist, but coming up with different ways of looking at things, ability to influence and courage. And what's interesting is, you know, these are not just something we've come up with on the back of a fag packet. These are based with research that we've done, but also we've looked at reports, for example, the World Economic Forum's reports very much aligns with this. So what we found in our research was very useful, that it absolutely aligned with the WF report saying this is what's going to be needed in the future. Absolutely aligned with Microsoft Future Skills report. So what we found is that our research was very much mapping with what other research houses were coming out with. So that's kind of where we were at in terms of a kind of high level capability model. This is what we think the future or even now will look like moving forwards. Lee, anything to add to that? Have I covered it all? He's trying to find the mute button as well. I'll carry on. I'm not going to go into this in loads of detail because I really want to get some more thoughts from our brilliant guests today and thoughts from you. But it'll be in the slides when you get the slides, and we'll have a recording of this. But just gives you a little bit of a, I guess, a little bit of a flavour. What do we mean by the superpowers? And interestingly, I was reading something I'll tell you what it was. I think it was in a podcast. Someone was talking about these superpowers. We don't call them superpowers because we need to be super brilliant at them. We call them superpowers because if just a little bit of efficiency, effectiveness in these kind of areas will go a long way. Just a little bit of empathy. So I'll give you a quick example. I've worked with teams before saying, no, we are good at empathizing with our people. We do an audit once every 3 years and we do a few focus groups. That is not what we're talking about. Again, if you look at kind of the areas of things like, service design, product design, marketing, people in customer experience, they are obsessively curious and obsessively empathic about their customers. They don't go out once a year to say, hey, how was the experience for you with our brand? They want to know all the time. They're continually curious and they're continually empathic. And how does this feel for you? That's what we're talking about here. So we're really moving the dial. We're not saying you need to be a superhuman kind of in these areas. We're saying they are your superpowers. So lean into these and you will get amazing results when you start to be a bit more empathic, be a bit more curious, etc. Be a bit more creative. Accept that you don't have the answers. For any of you that ex-academics out there, I started my life as an academic, and when you're in the world of academia, the more you get into your subject, the deeper you go. So maybe you do a undergrad degree and you kind of think, oh yeah, I know my stuff. And then you might do a postgrad. You think, okay, starting to realize how much I don't know. And then I never actually kind of finished my PhD. I sort of played around with starting it. But the deeper you go into a subject, the more you go, I haven't got a clue. I am learning all the time. And that's quite a humble experience. It involves a lot of humility to kind of let go of that need to be right all the time. And the wonderful thing about using kind of things like service design thinking is you get comfortable with saying, you know what, I don't know. I've got some ideas, but I'm going to sit on my hands and not even share them. And that's what real creativity and real curiosity are about. It's about saying, well, I've got some ideas, but I'm not going to share them just yet. I'm not going to assume that I know best. I'm going to kind of take a different route here, take a different pathway here. And that is where you get real curiosity and real creativity. And that is what starts to unlock a genuinely brilliant comms experience for your people. We've got the sort of a little bit more on developing your superpowers here. And again, I'm not going to go into this in loads of detail. You'll have the slides to look through. But I've just kind of gone through each of the superpowers and just talked about what it means and how you might build it. So empathy. So, things like an empathy map, right? I so rarely see internal comms teams using an empathy map. But if you have ever worked in marketing, customer experience, in user experience, in product, you'll use empathy maps all the time. It's a really simple canvas for saying, what are people's current pains and gains? What are they seeing, hearing, thinking, feeling? What do they need from us? And if I can't answer that, I'm going to go speak to a few people and find out for them. And just that little bit of curiosity, how does it feel for you? The amount of insight you get from that to really kind of stop you in your tracks often and think, you know what, I thought we were doing the right things here, but I realize now that we hadn't got a clue how this was really going down with our people because we'd never really stood in their shoes. It doesn't have to be a really big, onerous kind of research task. Something very simple here works really well. Curiosity I've talked about. So, questioning, learning, exploring, letting go of your expertise, because the whole time you're clinging on to like, I know best, you're not being curious. So just something like, trying out a new technique. So why don't you go away from this call and say, you know what, let's map an internal comms journey. Let's get curious about it. Let's see what works, what doesn't work. Let's do some ideation. So if we're designing an event, right, rather than just kind of going out to 3 suppliers, getting them to come up with some great ideas, why don't we have an in-house ideation session? And we've got all the tools that can help you with that. And you'll be amazed at the ideas you'll be able to come up with yourselves. Working with AI, great for curiosity. Resilience. We need resilience. It's an important skill for not just work, but every part of work, right? So I think part of the reason that I see teams be a little bit worried about going out and asking some of these questions is we won't be able to do anything with the feedback we get, or they're worried about how the feedback will impact them. But again, as you kind of really lean into things like design thinking, service design, you kind of get over this idea of feedback being critique, and you see it as insights for growth. And when you let go of that expertise, you realize that people aren't criticizing you as an expert, they're criticizing the experience they're having. And it really helps you to kind of build that resilience and get better at what you do. Creativity I've talked about, some lots of ideas on how you can get creative, but bad ideas, brainstorm, rewriting policies of stories, lots of different things you can do around creativity. There's loads of ideas we can give you on that. Influence. So this is not something that's particularly new. Go and find those skeptical stakeholders. Something that I did when I was in-house, I'm sure many of you do, but sitting down with those skeptical stakeholders and trying to understand where they're coming from. Insight-led storytelling. So the more you can use insights, the greater influence you'll have, because it's not the world according to me, Emma Bridges. Actually, this is how this feels for your people. We ran an insight session, we ran a journey mapping session with a bunch of people on your front line. Here's what they said. That's nothing more powerful than to get you influenced than kind of sharing that kind of from the horse's mouth sort of insight storytelling. Courage, getting brave, saying no, pushing back, even when it's uncomfortable. So yeah, I think that's something again that many of us do, but it's easy to kind of like, I think when you're in somewhere new, you can do a lot of that, and then I think as you've been in a role a while, you sort of think, oh, just I haven't got the energy anymore. It's like, how do you find that energy to keep being courageous? Strategic skills, again, I'm not going to go into this in loads of detail. They are kind of, I guess, the sort of the newer areas of IC. So I think the ones that really jump out to me are things like human-centered design, whether you're into product design, user experience design, service design, they all overlap, right? And the book would go into what they all mean and how they're different, how they're the same. But the bottom line is they're all people first. They're all about genuinely understanding the people you're designing for. And this is such a game changer for me. So when I started using these sorts of tools and practices quite a few years ago and using them with IC teams that we work with, the light bulbs go off straight away and people learn to trust the process very, very quickly. So something as simple as mapping a journey with a group of employees around, a live challenge you're working on, you see how effective these tools are, using personas, using journey maps. We've talked about psychology, systems thinking. We have to think about the whole system as well, which is where our influencing and stakeholder piece comes in. Facilitation and coaching, I often say I am a lifelong nerd. I've done so many different courses in my time. I started off as an academic. I think one of the single most useful pieces of learning I've ever done was my coaching qualification. So asking great questions, being comfortable with not having the answers. It really overlaps with the human-centered design piece, and it's a brilliant tool for working with AI. The stakeholder piece, there's nothing new there. And the AI augmented practice. How do we work effectively with AI? So there is the kind of on the right hand side, there's the kind of the guardrails, the governance, the risk side of it. Then there's the kind of the creative side on the left hand side of the coin, which is, how do we get the most out of this? How do we demonstrate our value by showing how much more value we add when we work with AI? So lots to think about there. And last but not least, I think there's probably a lot more we could put in this bucket. This is the stuff that we know we've done this for years, but this is the stuff that AI can now do a lot of. And I was doing some work with a client recently, and we're working on a lot of this stuff actually. And we were talking about, interestingly, although they're a real pioneering, what I call a pioneering organization, they are really kind of leading the way. They're recruiting at the moment, and we looked at some of the job ads they're putting out there. And we ran them through AI and said, how much of this could you actually do? And it was between 50 and 70%. Now, we can debate how right that is. AI thought, actually, I could probably do that. And what we did was, I might have said this as a follow-up afterwards, actually. We sort of said, well, how much of it can you do with very little input from the team? How much of it do you want to work, hand in hand with us as a team, as human beings? And how much do you think I can't go anywhere near? And it's fascinating to see, things like, a lot of the content creation. It's like, well, I can get a lot of that done. I still need your help with context, etc. The stakeholder piece was like, actually, you need to give me the kind of the background, the context, but I can help you with a lot of that. And then there were other bits that said, you're always going to need to do that piece at the moment. So that was a really fascinating kind of experiment to run. So I'm mindful of time, so I'm just going to come back to our lovely guests today and just get some views from you on this. And also, if you, as participants in our webinar today, would like to add to the chat on this. Talking about the strengths, first of all, I'll leave it up for a second. So those are the strengths that we talked about. What feels natural to you? What do you think? Well, I already do this. I feel pretty confident in this. Which of those do you think, oh, I'm going to need to work on this? And where would you like to grow? And also, what's missing for you from that list? Or is there anything on the list you think shouldn't be on there? And like I said, this is a prototype, right? So we're really up for hearing your thoughts on this. So tell us what you think about that. But Sherelle, I'm going to come over to you first on this one, because we went to Andy first last time. So any thoughts from you on the strengths that we've shared? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, sort of reflecting on these, I think you've kind of got the visual here and they're all separate. Actually, I think a lot of these really overlap, like they go hand in hand together. Like curiosity and empathy, like really are fundamental. I don't know how anyone could be in this profession without having curiosity and empathy. They're kind of just fundamental. Like you've got to have that natural aptitude and that curiosity to be empathetic as well with the people, you know, in whatever organization you're in. You have got to be able to kind of understand the experience of whether you've got people on the front line, whether you've got software engineers, whether you've got people in a factory, like what is it like for them? Because you don't know, you've got to reach out. For me, they are so important. The resilience piece is really interesting as well, because God, we have it tough. I mean, and I think that goes alongside courage, which also goes alongside influence. If you're going to be courageous to push back, then you also need to be resilient. If you're going to be courageous to push back and advise, you need to have the credibility to back that up and to influence. And then for me, the creativity is like feeds into all of that. You know, we're not internal comms people, we're not employee experience professionals without having a spark of creativity. And if you don't get excited about that opportunity to come up with new and different ways of doing things, again, you're probably in the wrong profession. So I can't think of anything that's missing in this. I mean, something that's, you know, I think really important in our roles and to be able to apply these is understanding the business that you're in and being able to understand the commercial context of the business. But that comes through curiosity. You've got to be curious with, you know, whether you go and work in a whatever industry it is. And I've worked in many different industries. I'm not a specialist in any place that I've worked in. You've got to have the curiosity. You've got to seek out to understand what the business context is, because that's also going to back up your ability to influence and be credible.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. That's really helpful. And Sherelle, what would you do with people who I've worked with teams who say, oh yeah, we are empathic, but there's, I guess there's a scale, isn't there? And for me, empathy isn't just going out and doing a few focus groups and running a survey. It's about really standing in the shoes of people you're designing for. So how do you encourage your team to be really empathic, and how do you encourage them to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really lucky. I have a brilliant team at the moment who really exemplify this, who's always thinking, oh, what's that going to feel like for our customer services people? What will that feel like for the people who are in our, you know, our small office in Milan? So it's that kind of constant thinking about them. It's like having your people front of mind. And in order to kind of channel that empathy, you've got to know them. You've got to get out and about. So like you don't sit at your desk in head office. You've got to get out to the factories, the offices, the call centers, whatever the locations are. You've got to meet people, you've got to have conversations, and you've got to be doing that like as much as you can. And because that then just infuses, like it's like an empathy infusion. Like you said, it's not about, you know, doing a focus group once a year or kind of having your personas on a, you know, on the wall. It's just thinking, it's got to run through your veins, and you've got to be thinking about it all the time. And if you are lucky enough to be in a team, I know many IC people are one man, one person, one woman bands. You know, that makes it more challenging. But when you're in a team, kind of having other people bring that perspective and go, oh, what about? Because it's very easy to forget very easy to just be caught up in the busyness. So yeah, whatever kind of prompts you can have to remind each other in a team is really helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Andy, I'm going to ask you about this one, the strategic skills inventory. You got any thoughts on this? And again, love to hear your thoughts in the chat around what's missing, where are you strong? You know, I'd love to hear if you are using human-centered design, because it was really hard trying to find examples for the book, wasn't it, Lee? There were very few people using that out there. So, Andy, any thoughts for you on this one?
Yeah, before I get to this one, I just wanted to add a quick thought on the last one, if I could. Well, we've run up
Sure.
very quick. Is that basically, I think most IC leaders I've spoken to this year would say they've been most challenged by the resilience and the courage points there. I think the amount of things on people's plates, I know it's always been a busy role, but right now, every IC leader I speak to says they're swamped. You then look at the kind of the job market, the economy, the kind of external factors, and potentially people lacking job security and not having the courage to say things they might say in less hard times. So I think those two things massively stand out for me, resilience and courage, in terms of the IC leaders need help with that, they need support with it. And of course, all of those are really important. I completely agree. But those two really do stand out from most conversations I have with leaders at the moment. But yeah, moving on to the strategic skills, I think, what would I pick out here? I think on the AI front, obviously you've got that as one of the biggest bubbles, but I think everyone I speak to is on their own journey, is looking at how they work alongside their AI assistants, working out how that's going to make them more productive, working out how to do it ethically, get the right governance in place, thinking about the environment. And I think that is taking up a lot of headspace for people at the moment, because unless you've come together in a focus group or spoke to peers or come to an event, actually you're kind of navigating yourself and working out how to have the courage to say to your team and your leaders, this is what we need, this is the way, this is the role we can play, this is the support that our AI assistants will be giving us, and this is how we're going to take the function forward. But I agree with Sherelle, you know, everyone I speak to has got that empathy by nature, I think, as an internal comms person, but it's trying to develop the new role alongside AI. I say that is every round table I've run, we spend at least half the time talking about human plus AI assistant equals, you know, new role now and in the future. And to, I think it was Frank or Lee's point earlier, it's now, it's not what the role needs to be in 2027, 2030. It's now. And I think there are businesses zooming ahead and businesses right back at the start. So there's nothing I would say is missing on there. There aren't that many teams, Emma, in terms of behavioural science. There are some teams that do have specialist skills, but I would say that's still lacking in most of the clients I speak to. So yeah, a few thoughts there. And coaching, yeah, obviously a lot more people are trying to move into maybe more of a self-serve, and therefore coaching their line managers, their leaders to do more themselves. So I think, you know, IC leaders as coaches is as important as it's ever been.
No, thank you. Thanks. That's really, really helpful. Okay. I'm going to move on because I'm conscious of time. So I'm not going to get you to feedback on this one, but just to ask people on the webinar just to reflect in the chat in terms of your thoughts on this. I'd love to hear about, you know, again, what's missing and the extent to which you think AI can do some of this or not. That'd be interesting. Because I think this is kind of much more like where we've come from, so probably less contentious here. Okay, Lee, are you picking this up, or do you want me to pick this one up?
I think you were going to pick this one up, Em. Sorry, I can't speak now, by the way.
No.
Sorry for my silence.
Yeah. So just very quickly then, because I'd love to make some time for questions. I'll go through these next few slides really quickly. We have got a diagnostic. Again, it's just it's not a psychologically reliable and valid diagnostic. It's a start of a 10, just to help you think about your strengths against the capability model, identify where you might be strong, where you might need to build your expertise in terms of what we've shared today. So if you're interested in having a look at that diagnostic, then snap the QR code and that will take you ahead to that diagnostic. Obviously, you'll have the slides afterwards as well, so you can use that if you want to have a look at it then. But just, yeah, it'd be good to see what you think of it, really. And like I said, it is a prototype. So let us know what you think of it. Like I said, you know, feedback is insight. It's not there to feel criticized by. So we genuinely want to know what you think of it. So just to kind of to wrap this piece up. So what we're talking about here is starting to get you to think of yourselves as experienced designers. So I hear both Andy and Sherelle say, yeah, we are already empathic, but I honestly think that the empathy that I think we need goes way deeper than I've seen most internal comms teams empathize. So for me, it's more to say, well, how would this feel for our frontline people? It's about saying, well, I'm going to go and find out how it's going to feel for our frontline employees. I'm going to go and find out what their current experience is like, and I'm not going to make any assumptions. And the great thing about using service design, human-centered design skills is that they give you the tools to this really quickly and easily. You can grab people for like an hour over lunch or on an online call with a Miro board, and they will tell you, get them to map that experience for you. You don't need to do the heavy lifting here, and they will tell you, and you'll have that insight then. So we need to start thinking like experienced designers. Think of moments, not messages. So that for me is a key takeaway from this way of working. And we've got this, again, I'm just going to kind of signpost this, the people first design loop, which kind of gives you tools for every step of the way. So this is a framework to help you to do this. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. What we're doing is we're begging, borrowing, stealing from already, well-established kind of disciplines and frameworks out there. So we're just taking things like the British Design Council's, work, IDEO's work, other work that great thought leaders are using, great teams are using, and we're giving you what you need to help you to do this without having to really think about it actually. So just wanted to flag that and signpost that for you. So over to you, Lee, to finish up.
Thank you. And I think, just reflecting on what you just said there, Em, I think, and one of the words on the superpowers is courage. And, it's easy to listen to this and sort of sit there and nod away, but this isn't a sort of evolution. This is a revolution. This is a fundamental shift in mindset and approach. And it takes an enormous amount of courage to go from being an expert and having the safety blanket of your expertise and knowledge and being the person who knows in the room, the expert advisor, to being an enabler and an experienced designer. That is a monumental change of perspective. And I think that takes a big leap. And that's the fundamental difference here. We're talking about a new operating model for internal comms. We're talking about shifting from that expert-led era to something very different here that puts people first. And I just want to underline courage. It really will take courage and strength to make that leap, and it won't always be comfortable. And I'm talking as someone who's built a 35-year career around my expertise and knowledge. This is an unfamiliar territory for us all. So just in summary, it is a blockbuster moment for IC. We think, but we're super excited about this. We think this is our moment to reshape, reimagine, reboot our profession and take it in a very different but very exciting direction. AI, as we're already seeing, is beginning to change the world of work. It's taking out graduate level roles. It's taking over for us in internal comms many of the sort of technical or process based tasks that we are used to, that take up the bulk of our time historically. And with drilling down into skills, there's been some fantastic skills and competency frameworks along the way, but they were built for another era. And what we've offered up here is a different way of viewing that, a way where the human strengths, the deep human strengths, aren't just the support act, but they're the headliner now. They become our source of value as professionals, rather than the process stuff that has got us here. Back to that point, what has got us here won't get us there. I won't reiterate on the model itself, but please do let us have your feedback on that. And again, this point about making the leap from expert to experienced designer. This is a big thing. We're coming at this as EX practitioners and thinkers. Experience is really at the heart of this. Many of us in internal comms have long focused not just on disseminating information, but on change, on culture, on behaviors. This is about crystallizing all of that and thinking about the communication experience that we build for employees. And that's more than just stuff and content and messages. Partnering with AI, to Frank's point earlier, absolutely, we have got to embrace this, experiment with this, dive into it full on now and start playing with AI and shaping up our experience and our skills and ability to partner with AI, because that is the big foundational skill set of the future as well. And yeah, as the name of this session suggests, it's time to recalibrate, reimagine, reboot, whatever R word you want, and rise. You know, this is a golden opportunity. So I hope this has resonated with you all. Yeah, to the point, AI is not going to replace us all, or certainly won't overnight. If we don't change what we do, if we remain in that sort of old school way of doing IC, information, content, campaign stuff, expertise, then we do risk becoming obsolete. The choice is clear. We've got a moment here, a window of opportunity for the next maybe couple of years to react or to embrace this and lead the change. And we hope you're as fired up as we are about the latter.
I'm just conscious we've run out of time. So if you want to leave any questions for us in the chat, what we'll do is we'll stay on and we'll record them. So the questions will be answered when you get the recording afterwards. So we've done that a few times before. So apologies, me being ADHD, my timekeeping, I can blame my ADHD now these days. My terrible timekeeping, I have time blindness, but I do genuinely have time blindness, which drives my husband mad. So apologies, we've run out of time. But yeah, you can pre-order the book here. If you want to leave any questions for us in the chat, we will stay on. Lee and I will stay on now, and we will record. We'll carry on recording answers to them. So we will answer your questions. I just want to say a massive thank you to Sharelle and Landy for joining us today. Really appreciate your time, both of you, and your different viewpoints. So thank you so much. It was quite last minute again. Thank you for getting involved and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you
us.
both.